Well, we're in this series called Didn't See It Coming. Didn't See It Coming. We're talking about unexpected things that creep into our lives, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves in a place and we're like, wow, scratching our head, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see that issue coming, or that attitude, or that situation coming. So here's the whole premise of this series. Are there ways that we can forecast if we're heading down the wrong path? And are we able to shift and get on a better path? Is there hope, in other words? And I'm here to tell you today that there is. Every week we've been talking about something that we didn't see coming, that many of us struggle with, and that how God gives us hope. So during the Civil War, on May 9th of 1864, the Union troops, the North, had pushed into Spotsylvania County in Virginia, all right? And so they were pushing into Southern territory, you could say. It was obviously, if you know anything about the Civil War, it was a gruesome war. It was a brutal war. Many times it was hand-to-hand combat. It was a very difficult time in our history, obviously. Well, there was an individual by the name of Major John Sedgwick, okay? And so this is a picture of him right here. He was a phenomenal general. In fact, he had gone to West Point, graduated from there. He'd been in multiple smaller wars. He had led a division at Antietam, which was a major battle. He had been wounded there, and he actually recovered, and now he had returned to duty in the command of the 6th Corps, okay? And so he is there at Spotsylvania with his troops, and the Union troops had kind of set up a perimeter for the evening. They were going to set up camp, and so many of them, went to their posts around the perimeter of the camp and made sure that everything was safe. They knew that the Confederate Army was close, but they needed to be able to go to bed and sleep and prepare for battle the next day. So the Major General Sedgwick decided that he was going to take a walk at dusk. And he decided he was going to go see his troops and see the perimeter and determine whether or not it was set up correctly. And his advisors had said to him, General, please stay in your tent. We have intel that there are Confederate snipers in the area, and it will be dangerous for you to walk the perimeter. And he said, no, I don't want to do that. He goes, I want to not stay in my tent. I'm going to go out and I'm going to see what's going on. And so he began to walk the perimeter. And even as he was walking the perimeter, some of his men were warning him and saying, sir, we suggest you get back in your tent because there are snipers in the area. And this was what he said. He said this, quote, they couldn't hit an elephant at that distance. The minute he finished saying it, a bullet struck him right underneath his left eye and killed him instantaneously. A sniper had taken him out. General Grant, who was over all the Union Army, when he found out that General Sedgwick had been killed, he was dumbfounded. And in fact, he even said this. He said, this is more tragic than losing an entire battalion or an entire group of men. To lose this one general, he was so valued. Now again, his last words were, they couldn't hit an elephant at that distance. Today, I want to talk about pride. I want to talk about pride. Pride is a silent killer. It will take you out. And I will tell you that pride is very hard to see in the mirror. In fact, it's almost impossible to see in the mirror. The dangers of pride. What is pride? Pride is an obsession with self. That's what pride is. If you were to say, Jer, define for me what pride is, it's an obsession with self. And I'm here to tell you that many of us, I believe God's going to use me today to convey this, many of us, if not all of us, deal with some level of pride. I know you think to yourself, well, no, a prideful person is the picture of a narcissist, someone who constantly has to be bringing all of the attention to himself or herself, a narcissistic kind of personality. And if that's your definition of pride or your picture of pride, you are not incorrect. But I will tell you that there are other types of pride too. Pride shows up in all kinds of people, whether it be loud people or quiet people, bold people or safe people, old people and young people. All of us can find pride in our lives. And you know why it's deadly? You know why pride is deadly? You may say, why? Why is pride deadly? Because it kills your potential. It kills your potential. Because if you fall into the trap of pride, you will not reach your God-given potential. In fact, I would even say it this way. Pride is the mother of all sin. You say, what do you mean by that? Well, it is the original sin. Pride is the sin that Satan gave into when he was a worship leader in heaven, and instead of worshiping God, he wanted people, or the angels, to worship him. And so therefore, he became prideful and got kicked out of heaven. Pride is the reason why Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden. They decided they wanted to be like God, to have knowledge like God. So they ate the forbidden fruit, the tree of knowledge that they believed was going to give them knowledge like God, so that they didn't have to serve a God, but rather they could just be God. Pride is the reason why Judas betrayed Jesus. And I'll talk more about the reason why of that a little bit later. But pride, again, thinking more of oneself than what one should, right? And you know, we're in this series about all of these different types of things that we didn't see coming. I'm telling you, pride is the root of most of the other topics that we've been talking about. It starts with pride, and then it manifests with something else. So today, I'm telling you, the message, I want you to lean in. I want you to take notes. I want you to say, Holy Spirit, open up my ears, open up my eyes, open up my heart, because here's the reason why we do not want pride in our lives, because it aborts out our destiny. We want to have a different type of an attitude. And so really, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, pride is rooted in insecurity. You know that? Some of the most prideful people are the ones that internally are the most insecure. And so what do? We overcompensate with our actions to combat the mind game that we are not enough. We're not enough. You think to yourself, I'm not smart enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not powerful enough, I'm not liked enough. And so what do? We overcompensate and we portray a persona that isn't really true. We're compensating for some reason we feel like we are not enough. And so each week what I'm doing is I'm getting up here and I'm talking kind of metaphorically about that we're on a journey, in life, and we're heading towards a destination. And if that destination is not one that we want to be at, God puts warning signs. Just like street signs, he puts warning signs in our path. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the warning signs of pride. I want to talk about how we know if we're on the road to pride, so that we can hit the brakes and put it in reverse and say, you know what? We don't want to go to that destination. We are heeding the warning signs. So you ready? Here's the first warning sign. Y'all ready? You silently compare yourself to others. You silently compare yourself to others. Now listen, we all do this. You know why we do this? You're human. We all compare ourselves to others. In fact, I'm not talking the healthy kind of comparison that results in learning or growing or maturing. I'm not talking that kind of comparison. I'm talking about the kind of comparison that sees how you measure up with others, how you stack up to others. That's the kind of comparison I'm talking about. And an unhealthy comparison does two things. You've heard me say this before, but it makes you feel superior or it makes you feel inferior, and neither glorify God. So when you see somebody and you compare yourself with them, you either feel better or you feel inferior, and neither are glorifying to God. Have you ever done this before? I mean, don't shake your head, don't raise your hand. I know we don't want to admit it, but we've all done it. We've all looked at somebody and we've kind of squared ourselves up with them, and we're thinking, okay, they've done this, they have this much money, whatever, and we're comparing ourselves, and we either feel better about ourselves or worse about ourselves, right? We all have done this, and neither of those mindsets are glorifying to God. In fact, comparison attacks your self-worth. When you compare, it attacks your self-worth. And here's a question. Will I be more if I have more? Maybe a better way of saying it is this. Will I be more if others think I am more? I mean, kind of quiet today in the room, right? The reason why is because we've all done this. Now, when you put it in that question, will I be more if others think I am more? Well, all of a sudden it begins to put a light on what we're really thinking and our motives, and that creates a little sense of maybe some shame, like, oh man, no, I don't want to be that. But many times we fall into this trap. And here's the trap. Becoming obsessed with what others think about you is the fastest way to forget what Jesus thinks about you. So when you become obsessed with what do they think? What does she think? What does he think? What do my friends think? What do my neighbors think? What does my boss think? What do my employees think? What do my fellow students think? The minute we fall into that trap, we forget what Jesus thinks. It's the quickest way to forget what Jesus thinks about us is by obsessing about others and what their thoughts are about us. You know, every advertisement nowadays, I mean, literally, whether it be online or on TV or in print, every advertisement has a subtle message. And that message is, if you buy this, you will be more. That's really what it's saying. Buy this kind of clothes, wear these kind of shoes, have this kind of car, have this size of a house, have this kind of a toy, whatever it is. And we think to ourselves, if I achieve this, if I get the corner office, if I make a little bit more money, I will be more. It is the promise that really is a lie. And so many times we fall into this temptation of advertising, thinking to ourselves, if I just do this, buy this, have this, or whatever else, I will be more. Okay, what's another warning sign? Second warning sign is this. You believe you're only as good as your last accomplishment. Some of you that are results-driven, performance-driven, you fall into this quicker than maybe someone else, maybe sitting next to you. I am a results-driven kind of a person. And I will tell you, this is one that I fall into all the time. It's this idea that you're only as good as your last accomplishment. And it's an unhealthy focus on trying to perform. Perform. This is not just the business person. Please do not think this. This could be the student. This could be the stay-at-home parent. It could be the individual who works in maybe, like lower management, upper management, out on the floor, wherever. It is performance. You're only as good as your last accomplishment. And you think that. I love what a pastor out of New York City, his name's Tim Keller, what he says about that. He says, when work is your identity, success goes to your head and failure goes to your heart. So when you really put it into performance, any success will inflate your head and any failure will begin to melt your heart. And so many times people fall into this trap. This is not an excuse to be lazy. It's not an excuse to not work hard in the name of having a healthy self-worth, all right? That's not what I'm talking about. But what you do realize is this. You realize who you are and what you do are totally separate when it comes to your value. You hear that? Number 3, what's the third warning sign as you're driving down the road? Well, you have trouble celebrating someone else's success. You ever felt that way? Oh, you got a new car. Awesome. Oh, you got a raise and a bonus. Wow. Oh, wow, you got a pair of those shoes? Cool. But deep down inside, you're like, you're not celebrating. You're forcing a smile, right? Because someone else, even if it's on social media, you look at their Facebook, you look at their Instagram or whatever, and you're looking and you're going, man, I wish I could be there on vacation, but I can't be there on vacation right now because I can't afford it. And you begin to not celebrate other people and their successes. It's a warning sign when we have trouble celebrating other people's success. All right, what is the fourth sign? And there are many more, but honestly, for the sake of time, and I want to get to solutions, but the fourth one is this: you stop listening to constructive criticism. Another warning sign that you're on the road to pride is that you stop listening to constructive criticism. You begin to think that you know it all, and anyone who disagrees with you is tuned out. Now, I'm gonna get a little bit on a soapbox here. All right, can you let your pastor get on a soapbox for a moment? I know I'm gonna say some things here that maybe is gonna frustrate some people watching today at our locations or online, but I feel like I gotta get this off my chest to a certain degree. We now live in a society that talks a lot about haters. We're always like, tune out the haters, don't listen to the haters, right? Now, I think this comes from two kind of sources, or there's two reasons for this in my opinion, and that is this. First, we do live in a culture where everyone feels like it's their God-given right to give an opinion on everything, even if they're not the expert on it. I don't understand it, but in no other time in society has there ever been a time that someone could give their opinion, even if they know nothing about the subject, they could give their opinion, and that opinion could be heard or read by thousands of people. I mean, this is very unique. This is not like any other time in our history of our world. So I think part of the reason why there's this talk about haters is because there are people that now have made it their mission to get onto social media or to make comments on blogs or to say things maybe that, they attack people. So they're trolling, you could say. So there is a good side to this idea of not listening to haters, because there seems to be a lot of haters out there, okay? So I will tell you, that is the good side of the coin. Yeah, we're not supposed to listen to everybody's opinion about us or whatever else, because sometimes people just do drive-by comments, if that makes sense. But the other side of the coin is the one I want to talk about, that I personally feel like I needed to say today, and that is this, is that we also, in this kind of mindset of saying, you know what, tune out haters, is that we don't want to be told we're wrong. We don't want to be told that we're wrong. And so now we've created this blanket of don't listen to haters, but maybe we should listen to some people that are trying to speak into our lives and tell us that we're off course, that we're not on the right path, and we shouldn't put them in the category of a hater. And on social media, and I don't get on social media a whole ton, but when I do, sometimes I get on social media and some people are like, I can't believe it, so-and-so said this, haters. And I'm thinking to myself, haters, you're a soccer mom. How many haters do you really have? You're a barista, for Pete's sakes, right? You work in a dental office. How many haters do you really have, And in our society, I believe we now have put haters in a category of anyone who disagrees with us. That is dangerous. We need to listen to people who disagree with us. We can't just put them into a category of a hater and dismiss them. Because you know what? Because your dad thinks that your boyfriend that you began to date is a moron doesn't make your dad a hater. It may make him right. All right? I know it makes you feel bad, but you know why you should feel bad? You're dating a moron. That's why you should feel bad. Right? So here, this is the thing. Please do not think that everyone that disagrees with you is a hater. Maybe, especially those that are close in that inner circle of friends and family and your community of faith especially, maybe they're trying to say something. But if you put yourself on an island and say, the only people invited onto this island are those that agree with me, you're gonna find that your life is gonna be limited. You have to have people in your life who challenge in a good way. and can point out things in a good way. Here, I'll get off my soapbox. Here's a question. Who has permission to tell you you're wrong without being emotionally or verbally punished? Think about that. Who right now is in your life that has permission to tell you you are wrong without being verbally or emotionally punished? You see, these are all warning signs, but let's get to some solutions, all right? In the few minutes I have, let's talk about some solutions. I love what the author of this book, didn't see it coming. We're basing this sermon series out of this book. You know, Carey Nieuwhof, he said this. He goes, only humility can get you out of what pride got you into. Only humility can get you out of what pride got you into. Humility is the answer. Pride is something that cannot coexist with humility, all right? So humility kills pride. So how do you do this? You get up in the morning and you're just like, okay, today I choose to be humble. Is that how you do it? Does that work? Nah, it doesn't really. Humility must be cultivated in your life. I want you to think like a gardener now. I know some of you don't have a green thumb. Any plant that is in your house dies within weeks. I understand that, okay? But I want you to pretend that you are a good gardener for a moment. A gardener makes sure that the seed is planted, it is watered, there's fertilizer, that the weeds are pulled so that you could cultivate the crop eventually. You know? And so in the same way, humility must be cultivated. It grows over time. And this is gonna sound uber super simple, all right? But listen to this, all right? Will help. You say, how do I become humble? Humble people and proud people act very different. So intuitively, you know who's humble and who's proud. Start acting like those that are humble. I know that's so simple. You're like, give me more, give me more. Well, I will, all right? We're not done yet, But a simple way of going about this is don't act like proud people and act like a humble person. And you know the difference. Intuitively, you know the difference. You know the proud person has to always talk about himself or herself. The proud person is always kind of bragging. Could be a humble brag, but it's a brag, right? There's all kinds of ways that intuitively your spirit knows if somebody is humble or if somebody is proud. So you begin to say, I want to be more like the humble person. One thing I've learned is this, is that you have to choose humility. You rarely feel it. If you are dealing with pride, the last thing you want to do is be humble. It's the last thing you want to do. Even as I'm talking right now, you're thinking, I don't want to do that. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to do that, that's a good indicator you should do that. Because pride rejects humility. And so one thing we've said throughout the years, I mean, probably thousands of times, it has been preached from stages just like this, all over this campus, all over this location. I will tell you, we say this all the time, that right choices eventually bring right feelings. So what do? You start making choices of humility, and eventually you will feel and crave more humility. But at first, it's just a choice. You're not even wanting to do it. You're just doing it, and it feels even fake to a certain degree. But what you're doing is you are saying, I need to override my feelings with right choices, and eventually my feelings will come into alignment with my choices. Does that make sense? So what are the humble choices? What are the things you say, okay, Jared, what am I supposed to do? I'll choose to be humble. I will have humble choices. What are these? Well, here's one of them. Choose contentment. Choose contentment. I love what the Apostle Paul is writing in the book of Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. Says, he writes, not that I speak from any personal need, for I have learned. Everybody say learned. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Learned. What has Paul done? I have learned to be content. Being content is a learned mindset. It is not a feeling. It is learned. Some of you are like, I just don't feel content. Well, you'll never feel content, or if you do feel content, it will be temporary. You have to learn contentment. It is a learned trait, learned to be content and self-sufficient through Christ, satisfied to the point where I am not disturbed or uneasy regardless of my circumstances. Contentment supersedes your circumstances. Why? Because it is learned and it is chosen. It is not felt most of the time. I fly a lot, and one of the things when I ever book a ticket, I always book a ticket on the aisle because I don't like being next to the window and definitely not middle seat. And it's kind of like one of these things where I get a little claustrophobic. So I want to be on the aisle. And one day I was flying recently, just a few months ago, and because I fly a lot, I get upgraded for free. So I get to go to like Economy Plus, where you have an extra 2 inches of legroom, you know? And so anyway, I'm there in my little Economy Plus seat, and I'm like just waiting for everybody to board, and all of a sudden this couple comes, this guy and this girl. I don't know if they're married or what, but she had the seat next to me, middle, and the guy looks at me and goes, "Hey, I'm with her. Would you mind trading seats?" And I'm like, "Where are you sitting?" And he does this. He goes, "Back there." And I'm like, "Back where?" Back there, like 10 more rows back. Like not in the nice little Economy Plus that I got a free upgrade for, but instead I'm now in economy, right? And I was like, huh. And then he says this, "Middle seat." Now he broke all the rules of plane etiquette. You know, you don't usually ask somebody to trade out an aisle for a middle, and you don't ask somebody to trade out Economy Plus for economy. I'm like, this guy, he doesn't fly a lot, evidently. And I'm like, well, and he goes, "It would really mean a lot." And I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? What would Jesus do? I sat there for a moment. I'm like, okay, sure. So I grabbed my bag and went back, and I went back to middle seat. I started to have a pity party for myself. I know your pastor had a pity party. I mean, I started to act like this was like, you know, like this was persecution. I mean, I was like being so martyristic. I'm like, I'm sitting in the middle seat. Now, here's the other secret about flying. If someone gets aisle and if someone gets window, normally they claim the armrests, right? So if you're last into the row and you're middle seat, you know who gets the armrest? You don't get the armrest. So the whole time I'm like this 3.5 hour flight, and I'm about 3/4 of the way in the flight, and the whole time I'm having this little pity party, and I heard this little voice inside of my head. It wasn't an audible voice. Don't think I'm weird. It wasn't an audible voice. It was this little voice inside of my head as I'm having this big pity party, and this little voice was like, "Jeremy, you dummy." I don't think it was God calling me a dummy. Maybe God was using this. I don't know, but it's like, "You dummy, would you quit whining over this?" That part was God. I remember sitting there thinking, And immediately I remembered, at least as much as I could remember, the first time I ever flew. And I'll tell you, the first time I ever flew, I was in awe. Walked into this metal tube, about ready to do 600 miles an hour at 35,000 feet. I just gave some of you anxiety, I know. But I remember the first time I flew, I was a lot younger. I was like, this is awesome. I didn't care where I sat. You could have said, hey, your seat is at the very, very end to the right. It says lavatory. I don't care. I would have just happy to be in a plane. What happened to me? Well, I'll tell you what happened to me is that over time, and the more that I flew, the more that I got to be in little nicer seats, and I got to have little things. And pretty soon now, I am in this middle seat in the back, and I'm having this pity party, and God slapped me up the side of the head and was like, you spoiled brat. You're not grateful. And I started to think about that, and I thought, you know what? That was a really lame moment for your pastor, just so you know. Hopefully when I tell those stories, by the way, it makes you feel better, not because you're like, oh, I can do that too, but more it's like, okay, we all struggle. There's been one holy man in the whole history of the world. His name is Jesus Christ, all right? I'm not a holy man. You're not a holy man or woman, all right? Listen, we're all have shameful moments, and this is one of my shameful moments. And I began to just say, God, thank you that I get to fly. Thank you that I'm even on this plane right now doing 600 miles an hour, 35,000 feet. Thank you I get to do this. And I shouldn't complain. And you know, I think about it. Some of us complain about our cars, but do you remember when you first got your driver's license? You didn't care what kind of car it was. You just wanted to drive. And it kind of brings me to this next point about choose gratitude. Choose gratitude. Ephesians 5, always give thanks. Always give thanks for things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. You're not happy with your shoes, but remember when you had your first pair of shoes, or maybe not when it was this big, but when you're able to buy your first pair. You're not happy with your house, but remember your first apartment. You're not happy with your car, but remember how cool it was when you got to first drive a car? Oh, how we forget, right? Choose gratitude. I love what Paul says there. Give thanks in all things. Always give thanks. Even when you're middle seat, give thanks. What have you lost your gratitude about? Some of you, your spouse drives you crazy, but remember when you would do anything to go on a date with her at the beginning? Right? Wow. See, maybe today, maybe God is going, hey, dummy. All right? No, he's not saying dummy. He says that to me. No, yeah. But he's going, be grateful. When you're content, you choose to be grateful. Guess what? Start acting humble. Real quickly, number 3, choose to give credit to God. 2 Corinthians there says, Paul writes, it is not that we think we are qualified to do anything on our own. Our qualification comes from God. I know you think you earned everything you have. But I will tell you, really successful people will tell you that there were things beyond their control that worked out in their favor. That not everything is because of you. Yeah, you worked hard, and yes, because you worked hard, you've gotten to a certain place in life. That is true. But at the end of the day, God is the one that gave you the talents, opened the doors, gave you the favor, right? So don't take credit for it all. Anytime anybody says, man, that was awesome. You did a great job in the office today. That presentation was amazing. Good job on that test. Way to go on that project. Way to go with whatever it is. Just remember, give credit to God because he is the giver of every good and perfect gift. Do you understand that? Last one, and we close with this, is that choose to be second by putting others first. You want to be humble? Choose to be second. Do you notice all these are choose? None of them are feel. If you feel, you'll feel your way into pride. You must choose your way into humility. All right? So choose to be second by putting others first. Philippians, don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. So, doesn't mean you can't be successful. It means that you share your success. It doesn't mean that you can't be blessed. You share your blessings. It doesn't mean that you can't move forward in your career, but you bring other people with you. You see, we need to be people who say, you know what, I'm willing to not always have the attention come on me, but I want to help some other people be able to come with in the blessing, in the success, and give them credit and allow them to have the limelight. And if we could be second, right? Isn't that what Jesus did? He got down and he washed feet. I mean, think about that. That's choosing second. In his day and age, the dirtiest part of your body, no joke, was your feet. Open sandals in roads covered with manure and dust and mud and everything else. Jesus said, I choose to serve. See, you want to be humble? Choose to serve. I don't know about you, but I have a long ways to go on this one. This week is hard because I think I resonate with a lot of you that probably would agree. We have a long ways to go when it comes to pride. We can choose a humble path. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I pray you'd help us to choose humility by being content, being grateful, by deciding that we are going to not take for granted the blessings you've given to us, that we're going to purposely be second and put other people first. We're going to bring people with us, that we're not going to be ones that demand the limelight. We're going to celebrate others' successes. God, help us to be people who are humble, who choose humility, because it's always a choice. Just like Jesus, you chose to be a servant. You chose humility. In Jesus' name, and everybody said, amen. Come on, let's give God a huge round of applause. Can we do that?